Welcome to Kaiser Watch with John Kaiser. I'm your host, Jim Goddard. John, what's coming up on the show today?
Jim, today we're going to be a little bit more optimistic than we have been in the past. We're going to talk about how little seemingly dead juniors are still making discoveries that can make a lot of money for bottom fishers.
So what's the significance of the Hercules copper discovery?
Hercules Silver Corp is an example of how not every bottom fish testing a geophysical anomaly needs to have a negative outcome. Now, the market's in a really bad mood, selling everything probably towards the bitter end of the year. That's involved with the Canadian junior resource sector. The feeling is everything fails, nothing works out, and even when it does, it gets messed up by some First Nations problem or who knows, forest fires or something else to disrupt the story. Now, Hercules Silver used to be called a Bald Eagle Gold Corp, and it did an RTO of a CPC and brought a Nevada low sulfidation epithermal gold project called I think it was Hot Springs. Yeah, Hot Springs was its name, into the company. And they did this in 2021, raised money for it, but then ended up selling that project and pivoting to an entirely new story, which was the Hercules Silver project in western Idaho. Now, this is a carbonate replacement system with silver, zinc, lead type credits, and it's typical Idaho type of story, very high grade. It has over 300 historical holes into it. It's been Swiss cheesed, and the company named itself Hercules Silver because, of course, it's pitching itself to all the silver bugs out there who absolutely love it when companies deliver high-grade silver intersections, even though on an economic scale, they probably don't add up to anything worth mining. So this company was forced to do several pretty dilutionary financings, 30.7 million units at 8 cents in June of 2022, 28.8 million units at 20 cents in April of this year, and that had puffed its fully diluted up to about 262 million shares, or 242 million shares, and it was trading most of the year in the sort of 20 to 30 cents range, not particularly heavily, but it started to perk up in early September when the company finally rewarded their shareholders with some high-grade silver assays. But buried inside that press release was a discussion about a blind porphyry copper target that had emerged from field work in 2022. And this is a good example of sort of science-based exploration where you look at a project. Yes, you can re-drill these old zones and show the market fancy numbers, but let's look at the property in its entirety. Let's see what's there. And there was copper smoke in the southeastern part of the property that had never really been explained. So they did geophysical surveys, IP surveys, and they discovered that there was a very substantial IP anomaly about more than 200 meters deep, deeper than the CRD mineralization, the silver zinc, the silver mineralization. And in September, they drilled the first hole into this. This hole was 23.5, and it tested this IP anomaly. And market didn't really pay too much attention because they didn't even really talk about what they were doing. They did indicate what their plans were in their presentation, but they didn't even mention in the news release that this hole is underway. So it was quite a surprise when the stock was halted on October the 10th for assays for this particular hole, and it was incredible. It was 185 meters of 0.84% copper, between 246 to 431 meters, and it included 45 meters of 1.94% copper. Clearly, some sort of supergene enrichment was going on. And there was also a minor molybdenum credit and a 2.6 gram per ton silver credit. And this set the stock off. It traded up almost to a dollar, then retreated back into that 60-80 cents range as there were additional holes drilled in that copper target that were still pending. The company did release another CRD hole, but the market didn't really care too much about that because it now understood. We now have a blind district, copper district play that's brand new. And this is Hercules Silver discovery is significant because it shows that when you follow the data and you put drill holes into it, not always does it have to be a disappointment. It can actually deliver a huge discovery. Now, that's only one of the things that is significant. Another significant thing is that less than a month later, on November 6th, the stock was halted for news that Barrick was buying $23.4 million worth of stock at $1.10, which was a 37.5% premium over the prior day's close at 80 cents. And on that new fully diluted basis at that price, the Hercules project was priced at about $290 million. Now, Barrick now owns 33.6 million shares and 6.8 million warrants. The company is now more than adequately funded to do the delineation drilling because the depth is only down to sort of maximum 600 meters. It's not going to be a slog as it has become for Tim Marsh's Bell Copper, where the big sandy target is beneath 1,200 meters of sand and some barren rock, and the drills keep getting jammed, and they end up taking forever to drill. No, this is a classic delineation drill play. And the stock today closed at $1.50, at which the implied value is nearly $400 million. And a third thing that I think is significant is that when you have a project with a rich metallic endowment that's sort of focused in one part, doing the rethink on a bigger scale sometimes can really pay off and take old dogs that you might think are just going to be recycled and re-drilled and maybe packaged up as an optionality play. Maybe there is a dimension there that is brand new and different. And this reminds me an awful lot of late 2015 when Richard Warkey's Arizona Mining had wasted $40 million demonstrating that the Hermosa Taylor project, a silver oxide open pitable play in Arizona, was worthless. But the exploration VP, Don Taylor, was looking at these zinc, silver, lead sulfides at the pit limit or the projected pit limit, and sort of thinking, what does this go all about? And so he started to drill deeper, chasing this. And by early 2016, it had become clear to me that, wow, this is an emerging discovery. And the market had totally ignored it in 2015 and even ignored it in the early part of 2016. But this ended up becoming a 100 million ton plus high-grade zinc, lead, silver system, a carbonate replacement style system. And in 2018, South 32 paid $6.19 to buy it out for $2.1 billion. So taking a metallic, well-endowed system and rethinking what's all connected to it, that's what you look for in juniors, especially bottom fish juniors. And there's several that I have mentioned to my subscribers. We're not going to talk about them here on Kaiser Watch until they've accumulated these positions. But these are stories unfolding right now before our eyes, even with drill programs starting or even with results pending.
Should the market be holding its breath for assays from the Adamera Buckhorn 2.0 drill program?
At first, I did not really have much expectations. I talked about Adamera minerals in my October 20th Kaiser Watch episode. It was sort of bundled in with a discussion about Solitario and its Golden Crest project in South Dakota, where drilling has been hung up by the plodding pace of the U.S. Forest Service. The story about a month ago for Adamera was that they of course, the Buckhorn 2.0 is a big halo of land around the original Buckhorn 1.0 deposit, the crown jewel, which Kinross acquired by taking out Crown Resources, developed, and it became a very lucrative, high-grade underground gold mine. And they tried to look for more mineralization in the surrounding area, applied for this huge plan of operations, which the U.S. Forest Service said absolutely no way. When the mine depleted, Kinross gave up, walked away. The mine's now reclaimed, and they dropped all the land. And that's how Adamera entered the picture several years ago and staked or optioned all the surrounding land and said, okay, we're going to pick up where Kinross left off. And obviously they still have to navigate all the permitting obstacle course, but they're doing it in smaller chunks. And they did get a permit last year from the U.S. Forest Service for a small area near the old Buckhorn mine. And this area has the VTEM 30 target, which is a subtle target that was part of the VLF VTEM geophysical data that Adamera bought as a whole data package from Kinross a couple of years ago, for which Kinross got an NSR. And they had drilled some, in 2022, they drilled a number of similar targets on the BLM land where they got the permits, but they didn't get anything to explain the conductivity. So they were really thinking these targets seem to be mirages. They don't add up to anything. So this year they did an audio magnetotelluric survey, which is a different type of geophysical survey that has greater depth, gives you better depth resolution. And they confirmed that, yes, there's a sulfide body somewhere between 200 and 300 meters and another one beneath that also. But the permit that they got late last year from the U.S. Forest Service was expiring in October. And when I last talked about this on sort of mid-October, Mark Palibaba had just announced a $250,000 financing at a nickel, and he was scrambling to get this program done before the permit expired. Well, on November 16th, last Thursday, they reported that they had managed to drill 2 holes, one at an 85-degree angle, which is near vertical, and another from the same pad at 50 degrees. And he reported that one of them, the first one, the vertical hole, intersected 60 meters of disseminated sulfides, and the second angled hole intersected 90 meters at the expected depth of this sort of 1,000-meter by 400-meter AMT anomaly. The news release says that true widths are unknown, but from the geophysical context and the angles of the two holes, it's pretty clear that this flat-lying body has a true thickness somewhere around 60 meters. And the tonnage footprint, if this is all sulfides, we're talking a 60, 80 million ton range. Now that means this is a very substantial target. Now, the story that I talked about last month was this program has 2 purposes. One is to see if AMT surveys can be used to validate these VLF VTEM targets, of which they have an awful lot. And the other is, of course, to find one of these sulfide bodies that actually have gold in it, similar to the skarn deposit, the crown jewel itself, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for another 1 to 2 million ounce high grade gold system. Now, when Mark first looked at the core box, he was pretty disappointed at what it all looked like. But by the time it had been washed and cleaned, and he took his hand lens to it, he realized, oh man, this is disseminated sulfides. But he didn't really know to what extent. Now, The press release did not have any graphics, did not have much detailed information about visuals. When I talked to him last week, he said, the sulfides, they vary depending on the host rock within the intervals, the disseminated sulfide intervals. And he mentioned that chalcopyrite is present a lot, and we also see pyrrhotite, which is one of the iron sulfides, which is magnetic and probably responsible for the magnetic part of the conductor anomaly, which is nice to see, because if the pyrrhotite ends up being associated with something that you want, like gold, then you can have a good track or marker to vector in on where the gold mineralization actually ended up. So what Mark did over the weekend was he headed back to Northeast Washington, where this project's located, on a hunting expedition armed with an XRF gun. And he spent the weekend shooting the core at all kinds of angles, taking different readings to try and get a qualitative sense about what are these disseminated sulfides all about. And obviously he knows there's some copper in it, so of course the XRF unit's going to read copper. But what he was really surprised about was that there are all kinds of pathfinder elements present in it, such as mercury and tellurium, and even silver. And of course, none of this you can totally quantify. You cannot quantify it with an XRF gun because it is a point-like reading, and there's about 1 million points to read in a piece of core, so it's not the same as getting an assay, but it gives you a qualitative sense of what the mineralogy is sort of like. And the presence of the silver in particular, although quite low grade, it's interesting because the Crown Jewel skarn deposit had a 1-to-1 gold-silver ratio. And of course, nobody ever heard about the silver, because who cares about 15 gram per ton silver when you have a 15 gram per ton gold deposit? The silver's rock value is tiny compared to the gold value. But if this is a fluid system that is well endowed with all these elements, silver's presence, it's only 1.5 kilometers from the old Crown Jewel mine, and gold is also part of it. These assays are definitely something to hold your breath for. And Mark was pretty disappointed last week. His stock actually went down on the news release, a penny down to 2 cents or so. It's like nobody cared. Every hole that you drill into an anomaly, even if you hit sulfides, it's going to be a dud. And today, the stock started to wake up, managed to close at 5 cents, traded almost 5.5 cents, almost traded 1 million shares. And maybe people are realizing that sometimes these nearly dead juniors, in the case of Adamera with its 290 million fully diluted, it's going to, if the outcome is that this is just a sulfide deposit with no meaningful gold present in it, its value is that, yes, AMT can be used to upgrade all these VLF, VTAM anomalies they have on the property, but they'll probably have to do a rollback. On the other hand, if this is a significantly gold mineralized system, this story comes alive in the way that Hercules Silver has done since early October. So I think we're in a sort of special time of the cycle, a 10-year bear cycle, coming to what looks like a capitulation end that could actually end up being the rebirth. And although I wake up despondent every morning, by the time I get into the office and start researching this stuff, doing more bottom fishing, I get excited that there's so many stories here that are fantastic bottom fish at absolutely dirt cheap prices, and even some of them with press releases that are screaming, we have something significant. We are going to make you a lot of money if you buy this 5, 10, 20, 30 cent stock and assume it's not going to die and disappear.
John, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
I'm Jim Goddard. Comments made on Kaiser Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as a recommendation to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at kaiserresearch.com.